Today's movie is Tremors, which won the Patreon poll in a landslide. And Tremors is such an anomaly. Like on paper, it's definitely the kind of movie you would expect to have like a small cult following, but what you don't expect is how freaking good it is. And I don't mean, oh, it's so bad, it's good. Tremors is a legitimately great movie. It's fun, great acting, tons of funny little moments, and it is endlessly watchable. Like honestly, every aspiring filmmaker should study this movie to find out how a premise that would normally be relegated to a Sci-Fi Channel original turned into one of the most enjoyable movies ever made. And I remember when this movie came out, and for school we had to make a wish board where we would cut out stuff from magazines that we really wanted. And I went to a Catholic grade school, so everyone did all the usual like world peace shit, but mine was 100% materialistic. And one of the things I had on there was going to see Tremors at the movie theater, which did not come true. I mean, hell, I didn't get most of the shit that was on this board. Tremors takes place in the small desert town of Perfection, Nevada, and we meet local handymen Val McKee and Earl Bassett, played by Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward, who is of course the son of TV's Robin, Burt Ward. I'm just kidding. That's not even close to being true. I don't know why I said that. I was just trying to get attention. Val and Earl are small business owners who run V&E odd jobs, and they're currently camping out in the desert. And I guess it's to get a head start on the day's job of repairing a fence. And now, I've talked about this before, and like where they're living is supposed to be so shitty, but where I live, we have like 4 nice days a year. Either the air conditioning is running full blast, or the heat is running nonstop. And these two have so much freedom and good clean air and that view. They set their own hours, the work is never dull.
We should quit this job and find ourselves some real employment.
Are you gonna give up all this personal freedom?
Val is 100% right here. Oh, what was me? I got to sleep in and now I have to repair a fence before I take my afternoon nap. You're living in paradise.
No.
And also, that right there. Just little things like that make this movie so great. And also, what is Val and Earl's deal? They're like best friends and co-workers, but there's a 20-year age gap there. How the hell did they end up in this codependent relationship? Just weird. So they finish with the fence, and the rest of the items on their to-do list for the day are to fix Bert and Heather's linoleum and pick up Nestor's garbage.
Already? Hey, what's Nestor paying us? $50.
Now, is that $50 every time you get his garbage? Like, let's say it takes you an hour, which I'm sure it doesn't. That's $25 an hour in 1990. And they're driving to the next job when they spot the new grad student who's studying seismographic activity in the area. And Val is excited because he's heard that it's a woman.
You will have long blonde hair, big green eyes, world-class breasts, ass that won't quit, and legs that go all the way up.
And when they meet the grad student, Rhonda LeBeck, Val is pissed. Like, he is very angry that she doesn't meet his very specific criteria. But also, Val, I feel like the ideal woman you're describing would fall over a lot. Partly because of being a ditz, and partly because she sounds very top-heavy. So Val is very standoffish, but Earl is kind and welcoming.
And you two must be Val and Earl. I've heard all about you.
We deny everything.
And this is definitely 100% a fictional character. Earl Bassett is not based on anyone that has ever lived. Like, have you ever been with an old dude when they stumble upon a young woman? It is always extremely uncomfortable and awkward for everyone involved, except the weird old pervert. But I'm glad they made Earl just a nice guy, so that he doesn't make like thinly veiled sex jokes that he thinks is flirting. And Rhonda's noticed an uptick in seismographic anomalies in the area, and she asks if anyone's doing any blasting or drilling, and they say that they'll keep their eyes and ears open. And as they drive away, Earl yells at Val for not being nicer to Rhonda just because she doesn't match his ideal woman. Like, Earl is a good dude. They head back to town, which has a population of 14? Holy hell. Yeah, I'm with Earl, Val. You do not get to be picky in a town of 14. And rounding out the residents of Perfection are store owner Walter, Nestor, Nancy and her daughter Mindy, Miguel, and the whiny little punk Melvin. And there's also the survivalists Bert and Heather Gummer. Heather is played by country music superstar Reba McEntire, and Bert is played by Michael Gross, who is rounding out the end of his career exclusively playing Bert Gummer. And guess what? That's fine. I don't fault him for that. I wish my job was just being in Tremors movies every couple of years. And I'm sure poor Michael Gross has had to say at one point or another, oh, well, I did Tremors because I needed a new addition to my house or something. And I hate when actors have to do that. Like, it's a job. If it sucks, you shouldn't have to explain yourself. We live in a world where you need money to live. Like, my job sucks. And people aren't like, oh, why are you doing that job? And I'm like, oh, well, I wanted food on my table, so that's why I did it. No, well, yes, that is true, but like no one would expect me to have to explain myself for my shitty job. Just like an actor shouldn't have to explain themselves for their shitty job. So if Michael Gross is watching this, you own this, man. Earl and Val then get to work, I think, burying trash in a hole. Like, seriously, that's the job they were complaining about that they got paid $50 for? And then they just sit back and have their second, at least on screen, beer of the morning. And I mean, yes, they're drinking out of a toilet, but that's their choice. And that's the point. It's the freedom of it all. Like, you've got Amazon workers that aren't allowed to take a piss during their shift. And Val and Earl are kings sitting on their thrones right now. But then they do have to empty the septic tank at Melvin's house. And okay, that would be pretty rough, but it's not like they have to empty a septic tank very often. And that's probably like, what, once every few years? So it's still not as bad as they're making it out to be. Okay, that would suck. And they don't seem to be very drunk yet. So yeah, they should be a little pissed off here. And oh man, it happened in front of a teenager? Yeah, never living that one down. So that was the last straw, and they pack up their things and get ready to move to a new town. And oh my god, they live together too? What is their deal? Like, we've all had that old dude that we had to work with when we were younger, but like, I barely wanted to talk to that guy at work, let alone share a trailer and basically my whole life with them. And like, it's not even a dad-son type of dynamic. Maybe I could understand that. You know, like Earl and Val's dad were like war buddies, and Earl took Val in after Val's father was mysteriously consumed by the earth. You know, something like that, but they seem like lifelong friends. They almost act like brothers. I feel like we might need a Tremors prequel series, like a 10-part limited series on HBO Max. Like, no graboids in it. I just want to know how these two ended up living together. And so yeah, they both just had a bad day, and then collectively agreed to uproot their entire lives and move to Bixby together and find an apartment together. Like, does Val owe Earl a life debt and therefore must remain his vassal until the debt is repaid? Like if any Tremors writers are watching this, was this ever discussed? Before they can leave, Nancy stops them to ask for help.
Sorry, Nancy. We're not delivering firewood anymore.
They have a firewood delivery service too? You know, a lot of these odd jobs seem like recurring revenue. Granted, there's only like 14 people living here, but Val and Earl live pretty simply. Like, I just don't get what's so terrible about this place. I mean, besides sharing his life with a 50-year-old man. Nancy tells them that she has a month-long job for them building a new pottery kiln, and she says she'll throw in lunches and beer. And they turned it down. I don't get these two. I mean, you get to build a pottery kiln drunk and you get free lunches. And before they can get out of town, they see the local drunk Edgar sitting at the top of an electricity pylon. And when they climb up there, they find that he's dead. And the local doctor determines that he sat up there for 3 or 4 days and died of dehydration. It's an odd situation, but everyone just kind of dismisses it because Edgar was a raging alcoholic. And now, drinking every now and then is fine, but don't become so far gone that when you die on top of a pylon, no one bothers to investigate as to why. They try to get out again, and they find a small farm with the owner Fred missing and all of his sheep slaughtered. They then find Fred partially buried, and they think that there's a serial killer on the loose. They go back to call the cops, but find that all the phones are dead. So Val and Earl again try to make their way to Bixby to get help, but the road is now completely blocked. And now they are 100% convinced that there's a serial killer. And I read that the director wanted to market this as a murder mystery thriller. That way when audiences watched it, they would be surprised by the underground worms. And I think that they should have leaned into that because the opening 20 minutes are just so well done, ratcheting up the tension and the isolation. Also, even if it was just a serial killer, I still think it would be an amazing movie. They go back to the store and they find that something was attached to their axle. And they determine that that's what probably killed Fred and that there could be more of them out there. That night, the doctor and his wife are prepping the site for their new house that they're building. And in the most horrifying scene that I had seen up to that point, as his wife jumps in the car to get away from the creatures, they begin to pull the whole car into the ground. Like, if they didn't eat her, then she died by being buried alive. That's horrifying. The next morning, Val and Earl decide again to try to get to Bixby.
Those snake things couldn't travel that fast.
Shit, for all you know, they can fly.
Well, not yet. They make their way to the doctor's place first to check on him, and they find the car buried. They get attacked, and they discover that the snake-like creatures are just a part of a giant worm monster, and they run towards an aqueduct, and the monster dies when it crashes into the concrete wall. Rhonda finds them and determines that there are at least 3 more of those things based on the seismographic readings. They get attacked by another one and run into a rock, and determine that the creatures can sense them through vibrations in the ground. So they pole vault their way from rock to rock and make it back to town in Rhonda's truck. They realize that the creatures are making their way toward town, and Walter says that they should name them since they discovered them, and he comes up with the name Graboids. I gotta say, worst name I've ever heard. The Graboids attack the town and kill the shopkeeper Walter, and I think as a kid, giant creatures eating people was just like my biggest fear. I mean, you had this movie, Jaws, the Rancor eating that Gamorrean guard in Jabba's palace. Oh, and him just squealing the whole time. Ugh, freaking Audrey too from Little Shop of Horrors. Like, there's just something so horrible about just getting eaten alive. And they don't even have to show it. It can just be implied that the giant eats people. Like, oh, I don't know, maybe the Gorax from Ewok Adventure. And so yeah, being eaten alive by a giant creature is one of my big fears. And also being buried alive. I mean, hell, dying peacefully in your sleep at 102? Still also terrifying. Oh, he lived a long life. Yeah, half of it was spent working. That's not a good life. Plus you figure another third of your life to sleep, tack on time to shit and piss. And that 102-year-old man had about a day and a half in that entire century to actually do something for himself. And he spent that time browsing Netflix until he went to bed. They all get separated and Earl, Val, and Miguel end up on the roof of the store. Rhonda's at the top of the water tower. And the great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather of Hudson from Aliens climbs on top of the shed.
No way, man. No, you guys gotta do something. You gotta do something. That's it, man. It's game over, man. It's game over. What the fuck are we gonna do now? What are we gonna do?
Bert and Heather are in their basement polishing guns, as they probably do 22 hours a day, when we get one of my favorite scenes ever, as a graboid busts through the basement wall, and in a scene reminiscent of Predator, they just unload everything they have into this thing's face. About as satisfying a movie monster death as you're ever gonna get, and we're only halfway through this movie. Like, that's how great Tremors is.
We killed it! You got that? We killed that mother humper! Come back!
Well, I guess we don't get to make fun of Bert's lifestyle anymore, huh?
Oh, Earl. You shouldn't make fun of anyone's lifestyle. Bert and Heather at least clearly have a lot of disposable income. The graboids are tearing the buildings out from under them, so they formulate a plan to attach an old semi-trailer to the Bobcat and take that to the mountains. They load everyone up in the Bobcat, and Bert has probably the most depressing realization that a prepper can ever have.
Food for 5 years. 1,000 gallons of gas, air filtration, water filtration, Geiger counter, underground. Goddamn monsters.
And it's true. The things that preppers prepare for are probably not going to happen. Like, statistically speaking, a prepper is more likely to die from falling down a well that they're trying to dig rather than an actual attack. They're almost to the mountains when the graboids set a trap and drop them into a pit, and they decide their best option is to head for some rocks.
We're gonna have to make a run for those rocks!
I don't know, Val. It's a hell of a long way.
Yeah, man, look at us. Those things are gonna come in here just like they did before, and they're gonna come in here and they're gonna come in here and they're gonna get us.
To put Melvin's mind at ease, Bert finally gives him a gun, and they make a run for it.
All right, here.
Oh, Bert! You asshole!
I love it. So they're trapped on the rock, and they get the idea to throw Bert's explosives and have the graboids try to eat them.
What kind of fuse is that?
Cannon fuse.
What the hell you use it for?
A cannon.
I mean, this movie's just so good. Also, for the record, Bert Gummer is a hell of a Halloween costume idea. Like any Halloween costume that you can incorporate a sick mustache is a definite winner. But you have to grow your own mustache. None of this cheap shit from Spirit Halloween that Brandon's always trying to push. You know the dude works on commission, right? And he's a registered sex offender? That has nothing to do with the fake mustaches, but it definitely means you shouldn't let him pressure you into buying a dumb-looking mustache that's just going to give you an upper lip rash. The bomb idea works and they kill one of the graboids, but when they try it on the last one, it spits out the bomb and blows up all the other bombs. Val, Earl, and Rhonda get blown off the rock and get trapped by the last graboid. There's only one bomb left and they make a run for it, and when they get to the edge of the cliff, they set off the bomb and we get the fourth satisfying graboid death of this movie.
Run, Val! Can you fly, you sucker? Can you fly?
Like, just so good. So everyone is safe, and Val and Earl are preparing to be international celebrities, and Rhonda is going to stay and head up the research on the graboids. Man, I want a continuation of all their stories, which we could have had a few times. They could have continued all their stories in Tremors 2, but Kevin Bacon was actually thrown into a deep depression while making this movie because he thought that it would ruin his career. And like, I get that. On paper, it sounds like the stupidest movie you could ever have. And while you're making it, you don't know if it's going to be good or not, so yeah, of course he was embarrassed the entire time. But can you imagine if Kevin Bacon was in a better frame of mind and would have agreed agreed to do Tremors 2. Like, Tremors 2 is already so much fun, but it would have been insane if they would have got everyone back to return. And then we almost had the Kevin Bacon-led TV series that picks up 25 years later. That got canceled before it even aired. And now that Fred Ward is gone, the dream is definitely dashed. I mean, his dad, Burt Ward, is still alive, so maybe they can do something with that. But honestly, I do have to say that my only complaint about this movie is the poster. I mean, obviously the Graboids look nothing like that. And like, I don't know if I'm most upset because the poster doesn't look like the Graboids, or that the Graboids in the movies don't look like the poster. Alright, so what do you all say? Do you like the Graboids the way they are, or would you rather they look like they did on the poster? I gotta say, I'm torn. And as always, thanks for watching. And while you're here, consider signing up for Patreon. We got monthly polls, and we're going through every episode of the Adam West Batman show.
Change in the lineup. Pitcher for the Gotham City Eagles, Denny Allen for Paul Diamante. Apparently, Paul Diamante is, well, we're not sure what happened.
But if this announcer may posit a guess, I think he may have got caught up in the fad known as jankum. That's where you seal human waste in an airtight jar and let it ferment, and then after a week you inhale it, and the euphoria was probably better than anything Diamante's ever experienced. Oh, Diamante most likely tried it once as a goof, but the immediate high was almost orgasmic and left Diamante rock hard. And by the time he woke up this morning, he was probably so far gone that all he could think about was cranking one off while huffing those sweet fumes and succumbing to the sublime ecstasy of it all. The Jankum lifestyle is a cruel mistress who will never let you go. Or he overslept or something. New episode every week, and I mapped it out. If I don't miss a week, then the Batman series won't end until New Year's Eve 2024. I have never planned that far ahead for anything.